questions. I'm sure other people your age have these questions,
Well, no, yeah, but what I'm saying is, like the whole point of this is to give a young person's account and perspective on things, and that I would have questions other people my age would have, and hopefully other people my age would find something like this and be able to answer those questions. But also, what I was saying was the dynamic of someone who doesn't know so much about the world, when they ask questions to people who do know a lot about the world, it can make whoever's watching think, like, why are things the way they are?
Mm-hmm.
So you get someone who's naive, who doesn't know necessarily the concept of taxes. Like, why do other people have to take our money? You're like, well, we give them money because we're in a society where people will do sometimes bad things to take advantage of people who don't know what they're getting into. Therefore, we need to have a government to have regulations over those things, but people don't just do things for free, so we have to give them money. And you're like,
it's the circle.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think your curiosity is important, and that's a good trait or characteristic to have so that you grow, is to just be curious about how things work and operate.
All right. You want to hop in?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you introduce us?
Welcome to I Am an Asset podcast. I am your co-host, Breanne Smith.
And I'm your other co-host, Zachary Wilson. It's great to see y'all again. Thank you for tuning back in. Today we're going to go over just two things. We're going to go over intellectual property a little bit. Mm-hmm. That might encompass a recent controversy that's arisen. What's the correct word for that? I don't know. About the demure debate. And then we're going to talk about some personal capital, but not just... We're going to dive into a little bit behind why we're doing this podcast, why we're talking about personal capital so much. So why don't you go ahead and start telling us, because I don't even know too much about it. Something with the demure debate. Someone took the word.
Someone was not very demure, as you put it. Yes. So if you have been, out of pocket for a minute, you may not know the story of Jules LeBron from TikTok, who has coined the phrase very demure, very mindful, very cutesy. And we've been a little obsessed with it around here for the last couple of weeks, as it's funny in the way that people are using it. And it's been interesting to watch how it has impacted Jules's life. But last week, towards the end of the week, we discovered that someone has submitted a trademark registration for the phrase very demure, very mindful. And this was really upsetting for Jules because she assumes now she doesn't have the rights to something that she created. That's the backstory.
I know if this happened to me, I would be upset about that. So why do you think something like that is allowed to happen in our society? Or is it even allowed to happen?
Right. So I think that's been maybe some misconception about how trademark registrations work and what intellectual property is even. So maybe we should step back a notch and talk about intellectual property, which is commonly called IP, you might hear, and which is a very demure way to talk about it. And there's intellectual property is something that is created typically by the human mind that you want to have protection over, and you don't want other people to be using without your consent or knowledge. And common types of intellectual property are patents. Maybe you invented some piece of equipment or some kind of technology. Trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets.
Yeah.
Okay, those are very common. So this particular situation is a trademark where you can put your stamp or rights on a phrase or some kind of mark, like, McDonald's has the M, or Starbucks has the little green circle. You know, certain logos are also something that you could trademark. So other people can't put like Disney on their own stuff and make money on it
Mm-hmm.
without Disney's consent, of course.
And I think, that's very important in the society we have today, because the way our economy works is people are rewarded for innovating and making stuff like that. And unless they had the incentive and protection to do so, there wouldn't be this kind of entrepreneurship in our society. So it's very important that people have these kind of things. And it's very disappointing when someone makes something and they're not getting the credit for it. So I think that's why a lot of people are upset.
And I don't think that it's actually going to turn out like people think it might.
Mm-hmm.
Just because someone submitted a trademark registration doesn't actually mean it's been accepted yet, because there's a very long process for getting acceptance of a trademark. Of course, they're going to make sure that no one else has already got a mark or a phrase very similar to that. And there is a database. I mean, whoever filed it initially would have been able to look up if it had already been taken. And then there's a very long approval process, which can take longer than a year. So just because someone has submitted a registration doesn't mean it's theirs. So Jules, hopefully, will get her own trademark attorney and submit her own paperwork, because the way that it's looked on is not necessarily the first to file, but the first to use it. And so she could potentially, if she acts fast, get the rights to it and win.
Well, that's good news for her and for anybody else who's having or could potentially have the same issue. So, one final question before we move on to the next topic. In intellectual property, how does that relate to personal capital?
Okay, so I love this question because, as we've been talking about personal capital, it is how your mind, your personality, your skills, your talents are used in order to make resources in some way, or be your earnability, and you yourself are the asset. So if you have the ability to be creative and create your own intellectual property, that's part of your personal capital. And so thus makes you more valuable, thus gives you the opportunity to make your income. So if Jules gets this trademark, which I'm sure she will, she'll be able to be the sole person to put it on t-shirts and cups and all of that, and it'll that'll be what she's known for, or at least for now. Although she's a very creative and funny person, and very entertaining to watch. So this is not the only thing she has. Obviously, she's got a following too, which is part of her personal capital. And everybody is, what I've heard, is big mad about what's happened here because she's got a community that's behind her and supporting her. So that's also part of her personal capital.
Yeah, that's great. And I really do believe that, in a world where so many people are trying to increase their personal capital, I think it's great that we have a system to recognize and protect people in their efforts to do so. And I hope she wins that. So now we're going to go into our next topic, which is, I've just titled it personal capital, but essentially throughout this whole series, all the episodes, we've been talking about a lot of topics and asking, how do they relate to personal capital? Well, in this particular topic, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into personal capital itself. And so we mentioned it in the first episode, and I have a little definition on my phone here I'm going to pull up. And the reason I want to read this is because it ties the word capital directly to the title of our podcast, the I'm an Asset podcast. So this is just the first Google definition, one of the definitions of capital. It says, wealth in the form of money or other assets owned by a person or organization. That's just the short. form.
Did you get that off of Google?
I did.
Okay, so can I add to that a little bit?
Yes.
Because personal capital is not only physical assets, like as we've talked about. I mean, actually, personal capital is not actually physical assets at all. It's what makes up you as an individual as far as personality and characteristics. I think what you found on the web as far as personal capital is your individual assets that you own. And that's not really what we mean. Personal capital is a common term used in the academic research for personal finance or financial literacy. So it's not commonly used in the way that we have been using it, but that's how it's referred to in the research. And so it is your financial literacy is part of your personal capital, but also your personality, your character, your work ethic, your education, your experiences. So those intangible things that help you earn money and build assets.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted to build on with today's topic is I wanted to clear up the misconception of that definition where people, they take asset and they immediately think monetary or material possession. And I wanted to define, when we say personal capital and you're an asset, we're talking about how you can have more than material possessions and money. You can have, like you said, characteristics. You can have a drive. You could have leadership qualities, things that are intangible, like you said, that aren't so easy to put on a piece of paper or calculate your net worth with, right? So I have it written down here. I'm just going to refer to it. It says who we are and what we do with our time is largely dependent on how much money we have. And so the reason I put that there is I wanted to remind myself, so I could remind you guys, is that even though money is one of the largest, could be argued the largest factor when it comes to determining what a person can do with their time, and people often determine who they are by what they're actually doing with their time. And so I wanted to say that money can be, it's a very valuable asset, right? But it doesn't have to be the only thing. Why don't you build on this a little bit? It doesn't have to be the only thing that makes you you.
It shouldn't be the only thing that makes you you. A common thing that I talk about in my classes is our focus on our income, our personal income statement. So we as individuals have a personal set of financial statements that encompass the assets we own, the debts that we owe, and the income that we make, and our spending as well. So many of us as individuals, we focus on that income piece, that income stream of money and growing it. And we don't really focus as much on the balance sheet, which is our net worth, and building assets and reducing our debts and growing as far as in value. But I think how that relates to personal capital is your ability to grow in both ways. And, you can certainly increase your income, but have nothing to show for it as far as net worth because you spend it all. So I think when you ask what we do with our time is largely dependent on what money we have, I think that is the case. I think there's a big thing between taking action and not taking action.
Elaborate.
Okay. So we can spend a whole lot of time thinking about what we're going to do, thinking about an action we should take, thinking about an idea, talking about an idea, saying we're going to do this thing, and then actually not ever taking action on it. And I think that is the difference in how we spend our time and the money that we have. Because let's say just creatively, we think about this idea of having a podcast, and then you and I just talk about it, but we never actually take action to do it.
I know that feeling.
And we could certainly spend a whole lot of time just chit-chatting about it.
Yeah.
And never actually make the move.
I'm going to tie that into the next question I have written up here, which is why should people try and acquire more assets? We give this spiel about how to increase your personal capital. What is it? And, a fundamental question could be that people might have is, why are you even doing this? Why are you trying to make your life better? And for some people, that might be an easy question to answer. Like, of course I want to make my life better. Well, like you said, you can spend a lot of time thinking about what you want to do in your life. And you can spend a lot of time thinking about where you wish you were and thinking about what to do next. And I'm going to need some help here.
Yeah.
People want this. I'm trying to cater to everybody here, because I know everyone watching each has their own philosophy of what they want to do with their life and what an ideal life should look like. So I'm going to try to generalize it so I can relate it to everybody. But people, at least me, whatever you're doing, you want to be good at it. And if you're wanting to have fun when you do something, you want to have the most fun. If you are trying to make money, you want to make a lot of money, or the most money is an oversimplification. But when you build your assets and you build this portfolio and this repertoire of skills that you have, you are able to excel in many more areas of your life the more you build on that. You know what I mean? Can you help me here?
I'm not really sure what you're trying to ask as far as the right.
So why should people even try to increase their personal capital?
Okay. So I think people should try to increase their personal capital to the extent that it makes them happy and their life enjoyable. I heard somebody say recently, like within the last couple of days, this whole life thing ends the same for all of us. Like, it ends in the same way. We're not going to be here forever. And I even, this particular person said, in 3 generations, no one is really even going to remember your name unless you would do some, great legacy of a thing. And so why spend your life sledging through unhappy? Now, I think maybe the real question is, will money make you happy? And I think to some extent, having enough money to cover your needs and some of your discretionary spending is helps with happiness. But the research shows that money is not, the more money you have does not equal more happiness.
Exactly. Right. And I think it's great that on this channel this podcast we talk not only about assets monetarily, but also assets that could be your characteristics. Because like I was saying earlier, everybody has their own philosophy on, what an ideal life should look like and what they strive for. And some people might strive for a life that doesn't necessarily make the most money they can possibly make. Maybe they make a decision to only allocate a certain amount of time for a certain amount of money because they're content with that amount of money. And so, I mean, we don't have to...
And yours won't look the same as mine.
Yeah, and people do it. I don't want to make an overgeneralization here, but people do it to be the most happy. When they make those decisions to make the most money, to make less money, they make it because the decision they make makes them, in their mind, the most happy. That's why they do it.
And I don't know that people are consciously doing it that way, because sometimes people can go after a career or a major because someone is pressuring them to do that.
I agree, yeah.
Or because maybe your parents have always said, I want you to be a doctor or a lawyer. And so maybe, increasing personal capital in those ways is not going to make you happy, but it will fulfill maybe an obligation that you feel like you have. But I think it's important to be aware of this particular issue, and that more, or seeking more and going after more, is not necessarily going to, in the same proportion, make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually there's sometimes, the adverse is true. The more and more you have, more money, more problems, right? Like, that's, you don't know that song?
No, but I can see the connection.
Yeah. And there's some aspects of that can be true. There's more responsibility, more to take care of, more risk, and it can be more time consuming. And I would say, as I have a couple of businesses, I am a professor, I have students and clients and employees, and I've a lot of people that I feel responsible for. But I also very much know that my time also makes me happy. So while I enjoy taking care of all of those people in my family, I also enjoy quiet time, exercise, long walks. I love a long walk. And those things make me happy, and they don't have anything to do with an income stream. Although I feel like your mental health is also part of your personal capital and can impact, how well you do your job and work.
Yeah. So this has been a very deep episode.
Deep.
Typically, at least I and she try to provide answers. Today was more of a think tank. Hopefully, after hearing us talk about and express our thoughts, you have come to a conclusion on what you believe you want to do with your life. Not necessarily that, but
and you don't have to have it all figured
you
out
don't.
right now.
It's just, there's so many ways you could go, and I wanted to clear up that we're not here to just talk about how to make the most money, or be the most in this category. We're here to talk about the philosophy of what
purpose
you can do to make yourself better and to ultimately make yourself happier.
And what's right for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Zachary, we have a big announcement today, which we haven't mentioned yet, is that our website's live.
Oh.
And you can find us on the web at I'mAnAssetPodcast.com.
Merch will be available soon. You'll see me holding.
It is available.
You'll see me holding a cup.
Yeah.
I'm going to get some.
Yes, we will get some for sure.
So thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget, you can always watch our content on many platforms, whichever is most convenient for you. And check out our website if you're interested in learning and more and wanting to support us. Once again, it's been great.
We'll see you next time.